Um, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first LUCC meeting of 2021. Happy New Year to the folks that I haven't had a chance to meet virtually yet. My name is Sam Shinbaga. I am the manager of the Community Development Group here at the Atlanta Regional Commission. And I'm just going to kick things off today. While the last year may have felt like a decade, for many of us. I feel, frankly, like it was just yesterday when we were doing our 2020 call for LCI and CDAP projects. And it was slightly different. We were doing it in person, but it does feel like it was just yesterday when we did that call. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize one thing that struck me this morning, which was that despite the amazingly hard year that all of us have had, both as sort of individuals and as employees, uh, all all the things that you've all had to deal with, what felt essentially like flipping a switch and changing a lot of things, going virtual in terms of working from home, changing local procedures and protocol, coming up with new ways for interaction with the public, finding new ways to save revenues. Um, the great thing is that we have still succeeded in completing all our LCI studies, the Livable Centers Initiative studies, and are on track to complete all of our CDAP studies from 2020. Now, the reason I say that is huge for us is, to me, that besides the fact that we got them done, the bigger thing for me is that it really shows your commitment, you as a local jurisdiction, as the project sponsor's commitment to looking at the long-term future of your communities. Because believe me, in the last year, it was very, very easy to forget the long term and think very short term. But again, I wanted to uh, thank all of you from the ARC for continuing to think about creating those livable, equitable, and resilient communities, which ultimately is going to create that great Atlanta region that we as the ARC want to create, and you all as well. So I wanted to sort of kick things off with that thought, because I felt like that was something which was a significant accomplishment for all of us in 2020. So with that, I think I will now get into before I get into the agenda, I know we wanted to quick do a poll and uh, just get to know who are the folks who are joining us, where you're joining us from today, and the organization that you're representing. So, Molly, whenever you're ready, we can throw up the poll.
It is up and running. We're getting some responses. We've only got 6 so far, so I know there are a lot of people out there.
Yeah,
waiting to respond.
And this one is a lot easier now because this is built into Zoom, so you all don't have to pick up your phone, go through some instructions, and sign on to another poll. So
let's see.
All right, now it's moving.
Yeah. Not sure what happened there. It looked like it was closed for a minute. Should be back up.
All right, so it is again great to see all our public sector folks, our local government folks here. Seems like we have some folks from the private sector and nonprofit. Maybe this meeting is too early for students to join us from Georgia Tech or Georgia State or some of the other sectors, education sectors. But again, I think this is good. Molly, I think that should be, I know there's
right.
we'll have to go, but this is a good representation for us. So thanks for sort of doing that. Couple of other things. So I think the next thing that I wanted to go over was the agenda. And we don't have a slide for this, but as you know, the purpose of this meeting is for us to go over some specifics of the 2021 call for CDAP and LCI. So what we wanted to do today was show you some examples. We have some great speakers that I'll introduce in just a minute, but we are going to have the folks that manage both the LCI and CDAP program give you a bit of the rundown of the application process, which is online now on our website. We're going to have Jared present about the LCI studies for 2021, and we're going to have Anna Baguette present for the CDAP applications for 2021 as well. After that, what we wanted to do was have a panel discussion. We're joined today by April McKown and Matt Lee. We'll introduce in just a minute, but we're going to have them talk about two of what we thought were very interesting, innovative LCI and CDAP studies that we undertook in 2021 and 2020. And the LCI study is wrapping up or wrapped up for the most part. And the CDAP study is going through the process. And it is a first in terms of the housing study that the ARC is doing. And so with that, I think I will introduce them real quick. And Molly, if you already have that slide up there. So again, I think I will start first with April. So April McKown, she has served the city of Douglasville for the past 7 years. So prior to her work in Douglasville, she also worked for the city of Suwanee and the city of Lawrenceville. Since joining the city of Douglasville, April has served in various capacities as their Main Street manager, their economic development manager, and now as their planning manager. So during her time at the city of Douglasville, she has also managed several planning studies and projects, and in hopes of creating a synergy in Douglasville. And April is the lead contact and the person leading the housing study with the city of Douglasville that we're doing through CDAP, and you'll learn about that in a bit. And then, of course, we have Matt Lee, who is the executive director of the Tucker-Northlake CID. I had the pleasure of working with Matt myself on the study. He has held this position since 2017. He was also part of the Tucker 2015 Volunteer Council that led to the incorporation of the city of Tucker in 2016, and is the current president of the Tucker Historical Society. So again, thank you to both our panelists for joining us today. And I'm looking forward to the panel discussion, which is going to follow the application process. And again, last thing on our agenda for today, because this is truly meant to be a place where we start to give you ideas about the application that you can submit, we are going to have some time allotted for just Q&A. So if you have any questions, we will have a whiteboard that folks can throw up ideas on, and we will also be taking questions either through the chat or for folks who want to get on camera or talk. We'd love that too. So that's the quick agenda for today. And I believe before we get into the first item, I did want to turn it over to Molly, who manages the Land Use Coordinating Committee, on our behalf to do some housekeeping.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So Sam kind of went over the ways you can participate today, but you may have already noticed that you are muted by me. We'll talk a little bit later about how we can unmute you after you raise your hands. But go ahead and use the chat function throughout today. You don't have to wait for the end of a presentation. Go ahead and throw your thoughts, questions, comments in there, and we'll get to those either at the end of the each presentation or at the end of the session today. During the discussion of ideas, as Sam said, you'll have two other ways to participate. If you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand, and then I will send you a request to unmute, and you can then unmute yourself and then speak with us. I know that some people prefer that. And then the last way that we have kind of offered for you to participate is, as Sam said, that whiteboard. So we'll throw up a whiteboard, and you can use the annotate function to put up your ideas, comments, thoughts, questions. If you are having any technical difficulties, as always, log off, log back on. I know it seems simple, but we find that tends to fix a lot of issues. If that doesn't work, go ahead and download Zoom's desktop app. Sometimes it's a little bit more stable. But if you continue to have issues, go ahead and submit a message to me through the chat function. I appear as the Atlanta Regional Commission. or email me at mbogle@atlantaregional.com or .org. I will throw that email address into the chat right after I get off. Up next is Marion with a quick ALMA announcement.
Actually, this is Josh giving the ALMA announcement. Thank you, Molly. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to let you know about an opportunity that the ARC has for people in the community. This is a evolution of our Arts Leaders of Metro Atlanta program for 2021. ALMA Workshop is a chance for leaders throughout the community to come together to learn about how arts and culture can be an integral part of community planning. We're looking for a group of about 30 leaders to apply and become part of this class, which will be organized into project teams that are going to come together to look at very specific real-world projects and figure out how arts and culture can move those projects forward. We're going to be, in between the project teams meeting, we're going to be programming a number of learning sessions with national and local speakers, there'll be readings and case studies where you learn more about the use of arts and culture in community planning. This is going to be a series of classes in March, April, and May, and there'll be a presentation day where the teams show what they've done, scheduled in June. All the dates are here on your screen. Molly, if you can go to the next slide really quickly. We're looking for a group of about 30 people in this cohort, and we're looking for planners, people working in urban planning, developers, architects, folks from local government, elected officials, people working in local government that have a desire of incorporating arts into their policy and programming, and then also creatives is the really important part that will have artists and cultural professionals engaged in this. The deadline is tomorrow, it's at midnight, and you can find out more information about the program, fill out an application at the link there, which I've also just put in the chat. And if you have more questions about it, please write me an email. Oops, hold on, I'm gonna put this, sorry, here's my email, and here is the link in the chat. All right, so please take a look at that and see if you're interested, and please share it with someone else who might be interested, and the deadline is tomorrow night. All right, thank you. I'm going to pass it to Jared now for a discussion on the LCI application process.
All right, thank you, Josh. But while I'm pulling up my slide, I think Sam has a brief announcement as well.
I do.
You said I have one more item.
That's right, and I think that was the one which I had forgotten to mention regarding the ALMA program. So you're good, Jared, and I think Molly got it.
Okay, I was just making sure.
All right, thanks.
Yep. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jared Lombard, and I manage the LCI study program here at the Atlanta Regional Commission. And I'm here really just to kind of give a brief discussion and presentation on the 2021 LCI application. Last month we really kind of talked about some project ideas. This month we're going to talk a little bit about project ideas, but also the specific questions in the application. All right. Just in case you haven't forgotten, the LCI program is a reimbursable grant program. ARC pays up to 80% of the total study amount. Applicants must be a CID, a local government, or a transit agency. ARC will award up to $1.8 million through the LCI program or CDAP grants. As part of your study, you must be able to complete all your work by November 2022. And this is important. We can't extend our contract really much beyond November of 2022. So if you're not able to go through procurement, select a consultant, sign the ARC and have enough time to do the study, still apply, but let us know and we can maybe work something out through that process. And all these projects have to have a multimodal transportation nexus. And that's a pretty broad connection, but we can't do a parks plan. We can't do something that doesn't have anything to do with transportation. All right. Just, kind of the schedule. Today is January 28th. We're doing an open house. Applications will be due February 26th. This is the same day for CDAP. That is the last Friday in February. We'll do an internal review. Hopefully, I always say, April will make the announcement, but it's always May. So now I'm just saying April or May will make the announcement, hopefully at our Community Resources Committee. Between May and June, we'll be developing a contract with the selected sponsors, and then they will have through the rest of 2021 and 2022 to complete the projects. So it's really almost a 2-year or an 18-month study process. Now, our focus areas. So for like last year, LCI funds are going to be focused in and on 2 main areas. One, main streets and traditional downtowns, or transit areas. And transit areas are future transit or existing transit areas that have a premium fixed guideway transit. So BRT or arterial rapid transit and above. Now, we have 2 main study types. One is what we call tactical, which really looks at implementation, and then catalytic, which focuses on creating visions for different LCI study areas. And I'll go through those in a little bit. As also this year, we're doing 2 pilot study types that may have something to do, or that may have something or are related to the LCI program. And then Margaret just asked if we're envisioning our call for projects next year around the same time. As of right now, yes, but we will let you know later this fall if anything changes. So what LCI tactical studies, these are really to help communities really implement their catalytic vision. These could be doing concept analysis for transportation projects, detailed planning study within the LCI area, design or development guidelines, or other implementation studies or plans. These are really taking, either helping the community really implement that vision identified in the LCI study. Catalytic, oops, and I just went too quick. These could be really new LCI study areas. And I will say, if you have not reached out to ARC before applying, please do so and send me a message in the next couple days, so we can kind of talk about your LCI, if it's eligible, what you're kind of looking for, and how much support you have in your community. Or if you already have an existing LCI study and you're really looking to, it's been 10, 15 years since you really have looked at the study, kind of doing a updated LCI study. Now, all of these projects, we're really also looking for a tactical component. So it could be looking at, how do you implement some of the housing recommendations, updating zoning, or really doing some concept analysis for some of the transportation projects that come out of it. Now, for this year, we're going to test out a few ideas that we're calling it our pilot studies. And we're really excited about these because we feel like these 2 pilots could address some needs, and we can also learn some new items to really incorporate into future LCI studies. The first one we're calling LCI priorities planning. And this really is helping you before you even apply for an LCI study or a new or to update your existing LCI plan. is really building consensus around how do the LCI priorities relate in your community. What's, a potential, if you're looking to be a new LCI community, what's a potential LCI study area, and to really develop a scope for work for your future LCI study that everyone agrees upon. It will, look at some of the issues, discuss, with stakeholders and your city council, to really, making sure that is the LCI program right, and is the LCI program, what are you really looking to achieve? So if, a lot of, say you have a lot of new elected officials or people are really interested in LCI study, but you really don't have the time in the next month to really figure out what that LCI study would look like, maybe applying for this. And then, this would lead to hopefully a successful LCI application the next year. We can't guarantee funding, but it would probably be a strong candidate. Or it could also be maybe the LCI program is not the right fit. Maybe some other ARC assistance would be. And the next one is what I'm really excited about as well, is our LCI Transit Creative Placemaking Pilot. If you're at the December meeting, you heard me kind of talk about this a little bit more. I'm just going to really go kind of briefly into this. But it's really looking at how can we, do creative placemaking at a place like this. This is a bus stop in the region. It's pretty similar to probably a lot of bus stops that you have in, in your community. But how can we, take these places and make them really a community asset as for that. So what we're really looking at in this program is how we can create, both safe access to transit. So part of this will be looking at creating pedestrian safety plans to get to the bus stops. How can we also encourage transit ridership, create community, and then this could be incorporated within a plan update or a standalone study. And so these are some examples from other communities around the country. A couple of these projects are in Lexington, Kentucky, where they, took a, standard bus stop and added some public art. The other one in the far lower right, that was more of a sculpture. If you kind of zoom in, you can see like it's actually welded together vines. And the other one is a public plaza up in Hopkins, Minnesota on their artery project, where they really took a corridor and did all bunch of public art and creative placemaking. And this won one of the APA's Best Streets Awards last year. So the application, the hardest part. So the LCI application, one, we're going to ask you if this project idea comes from an existing plan and what plan and where in that plan it is. So please don't say it's in our comprehensive plan and not tell us where in the comprehensive plan. We're also going to ask you, what's your goal of the study? What are you really looking to achieve from the study, and some specific deliverables? Are you looking for, new design guidelines, a vision, economic development, housing, those types of items? What is the need in your community? Why do you need this LCI study? We're also looking for you to describe the community engagement of the process, how you're going to involve local officials, community groups, businesses. It may not be fully fleshed out, but really, are you, thinking, what types of people are you thinking will be involved in this process? And then how are you also, what groups that are historically underinvolved, and do you have any ideas on how to reach those people? I will say for these types of questions, and the next slide, it's very important to, tell us, be honest and upfront. We also don't need a lot of planning jargon or why TOD's important. For example, we're really looking for what are you trying to achieve and what need or issue this study will solve. And then for this one, it would be, the next question is really, how does your LCI study advance or address one or more of the following LCI priorities? And for this one, quality matters more than quantity. So, if you really give us a lot of, just high level discussions about smart technology, creative placemaking, housing, and green infrastructure. And at all 4 of those, it probably will not score as well as a community that kind of looks at housing and says, yeah, we have a housing issue in our community and we're looking to address it with some specific things from the ARC, the Metro Housing Strategy. Or, we have a flooding problem on our streets and we're really looking to, develop a green infrastructure as part of some of our transportation projects. So we're really looking for more of a quality answer versus just trying to do some high level, because a lot of what you put in your application will then be carried over into your actual scope of work. So if your community is really not interested in talking about housing and it could derail the process, don't try to add housing into your LCI study trying to, meet our needs. And LCI support. So we're really looking for, you need a letter of commitment or a resolution from your chief elected official or your city and council. In the case of the CID, it can be just the executive director. If you are a CID, we will also need a letter of support from the underlying jurisdiction. If there's also major property owners, or if your project's really focused on a state route where it is running through your community, and that's where most of your study focus will be on that state route, a letter from GDOT. If someone else is providing matching funds, they need to also do a letter of commitment, and also in that commitment, a timetable of when those funds would be released to you. So it's really to help kind of making sure that they're committed with those funds up front, where we've had some issues in the last few years where people have agreed, but then it took another like 8-9 months for them to give the funds to the community, and they had some delays just getting underway with their study. I'm going to hold off on questions right now, and then I'm going to just turn it over to Anna, and she'll get us underway. All right.
Let me unmute myself. That might help. So good morning, everyone. Like Jared said, my name's Anna. I co-manage the Community Development Assistance Program along with my colleague Molly Bogle, who is, as you know, running the meeting today. Today, I'm going to give you an overview of CDAP, similar to last time, but then go into more detail about the application process and highlight again some of the changes for 2021. So in a nutshell, the Community Development Assistance Program provides planning assistance to local governments, CIDs, 501c3 nonprofits in the region. And CDAP's goals are really to implement the Atlanta region's plan at the local level, advance socially equitable outcomes, promote community resiliency, and foster meaningful community engagement. So if you're familiar with the program, or you might be asking what's different about CDAP this year. If you were at our December LUCC, you heard me talk a little bit about this. But with social justice movements and the impact of COVID in the last year, we saw the need to shift gears and bring a renewed focus to social equity and community resiliency to the program. And we define social equity as the just and fair inclusion into society in which we can all participate, prosper, and reach our full potential. Equitable policies address the harm from past planning outcomes and work to eliminate present and future harm to excluded or marginalized groups. We also define community resiliency as the impact, or as the capacity for individuals, communities, institutions, businesses, and systems to survive, adapt, and grow, no matter what kinds of stresses and shocks they experience. I think it's really important to remember that without equity, this first concept, there is no resilience. So in addition to those two concepts this year, we also wanted to encourage CDAP applicants to work with stakeholder and community groups while crafting an application to really identify community issues and craft project ideas. That way, when we start our projects, we already have a strong foundation for community engagement at the outset, and this project would truly address community needs as well. So like I mentioned last time, what is the same for CDAP? We still have our 8 priority issue areas. And instead of reading the entire Atlanta Region's plan, you can align your project with one or more of the priorities listed on this slide. These include lifelong communities, historic preservation, green infrastructure, access to healthy food, affordable housing, workforce development, smart communities, and finally, creative placemaking. So similar to what Jared was talking about, it's really quality over quantity when we're looking at the priority areas in your applications. We're looking for projects that really align with 1 or 2 of these priority areas and not the whole gamut. So we're looking for projects that address these priority areas while also focusing on social equity and or community resiliency. And if you want to learn more about these priority areas, I really encourage you to look at the descriptions in the guidebook. So as you may know, CDAP offers 3 different types of assistance. Primarily, we offer ARC staff-led technical assistance, meaning most CDAP projects are taken on by ARC staff. We also offer grant assistance, but these are small grants, much smaller than LCI. And these projects also require a strong transportation element to be eligible. Finally, we also have amazing partners that will take on projects, but that might require the applicant to adjust their scope or submit an additional application to work within those partner programs. And those partner programs include Georgia Conservancy's Sustainable Growth Program, Georgia State's Graduate Capstone Projects, Georgia Tech's Graduate Level Studios, and last but not least, ULI's Technical Assistance Panels. So to give you an idea of some projects that have received CDAP assistance, I've listed our 2020 awardees on the slide. And we've awarded assistance to projects of several different topics, from housing studies to engagement efforts to creative placemaking and wayfinding studies. The assistance type varies too, from a full planning report to facilitating training sessions. And in the application, you'll be able to indicate both the priority area / topic that your project addresses, as well as the type of deliverable you're looking for. So we've also adjusted how we worked during COVID, from masked and socially distanced field work for the Town Center CID sidewalk inventory to virtual training sessions for the City of Norcross Board's training program, to also an online engagement platform for the City of Douglasville residents to complete surveys and find out more about the city's housing assessment. During our panel discussion, you'll hear more about that last project I mentioned. So now to get into the application process. What we're really looking for when we review applications is a good idea that aligns with 1 or 2 priority issue areas. We will also look for how the proposed projects advance equity and or resiliency in a meaningful way. Local governments, CIDs, and 501c3 nonprofits are all eligible to apply. And finally, we require signed letters of support from elected officials and relevant parties. If you are a nonprofit applying for CDAP, we highly encourage you to partner with your local government jurisdiction and get signed letters of support from them as well. And also letters of commitment if you are requesting that the local government provide the local contribution for the project. So similarly, we will evaluate applications based on quality, how well the proposed project addresses social equity and or community resiliency, as well as those priority areas. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really quality over quantity for the priority areas. Like Jared mentioned, we aren't looking for planning jargon. We're really looking for how your project addresses those concepts in a meaningful way. We also strive to select projects from all across the region. So that's the geographic diversity criteria. And also many of the projects are taken on by ARC staff. So when we are evaluating all the applications, we are considering our own capacity to take on those projects. So this is a scary chart. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if you've taken a look at the guidebook, this chart explains the local contribution required for each type of ARC staff assisted project. If you recall earlier in my presentation, CDAP also offers grant assistance and partner assistance. Please be aware that this chart does not apply in those two cases. For CDAP grants, applicants must demonstrate a 20% match commitment, and partner studies come with our own fee structure. If you are applying for an ARC staff assisted project, feel free to reach out to me or my colleague, Molly Bolgill, if you have any questions about this chart. It can be a little confusing of where your project might fit in these project types. So I will show our contact information at the end of this presentation, and towards the end, I will also put our contact information into the chat. So similar to LCI, applications are open and due at the same time. They will close at the end of February, so make sure to mark that on your calendar. We will conduct both an internal and external review processes between the end of February, and we will hopefully announce awardees in April and maybe early May. So projects typically begin in late summer, around August, after we get through, MOA agreements and other scope review and stuff like that. So for both CDAP and LCI, if you're wondering, this is all great information, where can I find out more? You can visit the link on the slide, and I'll also input it into the chat. To find both program guidebooks, we highly encourage you to look at those guidebooks before you even begin an application. There are also links to the online application as well as Word document versions of the applications. When filling out your application, for both LCI and CDAP, we highly encourage you to download the Word document version first, fill that out, and then copy your answers from that document to the online application. The online application is the final application and the only one we will accept, but sometimes it is difficult to save and come back to. So if you want a little more time developing your answers, download that Word document version, fill that out, and then go back to the online. Okay, and again, I'm Anna Baggett. My contact information is up on the screen. Molly's is as well. If you have any questions about your CDAP application, feel free to reach out. We're happy to answer any questions if there's any points of confusion.
Thanks, Anna. And if folks want to ask their questions in the chat, they can do that. If they want to raise their hand, they can do that as well. And while we'll wait a couple of minutes for the questions to roll in, I wanted to just highlight a couple of things that both Jared and Anna pointed for LCI and CDAP. Well, first, I think on a lighter note, the pictures that you saw for CDAP, that was actually Anna out there in the field, walking every corridor, every street in the town center CID to do an inventory of sidewalk gaps. And that's the study that we're doing there to come up with a sidewalk gap analysis and to come up with recommendations on how to phase in improvements. So that was us out in the field, masked up on a nice sunny day, warmer than today. So that was that. Then the other thing you may have noticed for both the applications that the submittal timeline is a little shorter. You have essentially a month to go through and submit. A month from today. But frankly, what we did notice when we had an extended window, which was formerly, I think, sometime in middle of end of March, was that the application still came in the last day. So most, if not all, the applications that we received in 2020 came in the last day or two. So what we have hopefully done this time is started the application process a little earlier, are putting out a lot more information. And again, but given that timeline, if you do have any concerns about any of your projects, please do reach out soon so that we can sort of come up with a game plan for either CDAP or LCI for you. So that's one. The other couple of things that we did want to sort of highlight, I think, for the LCI was that you saw the LCI priorities planning effort that we're trying to do. The real intent of that, frankly, based on our past experience a little bit, has been that we will get through the planning process of a project LCI study to a certain extent, and then realize that the expectations of the study are very different from then the scope that we had created. And that sort of comes during the planning process as opposed to at the front end. And so what we're trying to solve for with this initiative is to work with y'all, go through a process, which again is not really, it's not time consuming on your end. It is not meant to, again, have a big match. It's not at an 80-20 match, and we can share more information with that with you as well. But that way we can work with your staff, with the stakeholders to really understand what the LCI study needs to have. And then the following year, we can go ahead and submit the application. So that's one. And the last thing I'll say is that what we're also trying to avoid with that work is we have had some cases recently, which we hate, frankly, for our communities that have applied, is that we'll select a project, and then we'll roll into January of the following year, and we still haven't gotten through the procurement process. And what that has unfortunately resulted in is that you have a lot less time to do the same study now on your end. So we have very limited wiggle room. Like Jared mentioned, we could maybe work with you to do that, but frankly, that's a very, very tough thing on our end as well. So we would really encourage you as much as possible to get sort of the buy-in and ensure that the procurement and the contracting process can move quickly after the project's been selected. So
just to add on to Sam's point, because we have a set amount of money. If we can't spend that money on your project this year, it's taking resources from someone else in the region. So that's just important. But if you let us know ahead of time, before we signed the application, or before during your application, we may be able to do some adjustments, but that's not guaranteed as well. So it's better just to let us know up front versus have in September after you already selected as well. But I'm going to ask April and Matt to turn on their cameras. We're going to get started with a brief panel discussion as well about some of their experiences working with ARC and working on this through the project. So, all right, well, thank you, April and Matt, for joining us. Hopefully, Molly, if you're not, can unmute yourself, or Molly can do that. So Matt, your project wrapped up last year. Can you kind of just describe your descriptions on your thoughts on working through the LCI program and the application process, and then also what was your project and the final result?
Yeah, sure. So the application process was great. We were pretty excited. We know a lot of folks come to you, and so we're coming with an idea that we felt really good about. We wanted to make sure that you guys felt good about it. And so earlier in the presentation, when you guys talked about being honest and clear, we felt like that was really the case. And we felt like we're getting straight answers, that if this wasn't something you were interested in, that you wouldn't be, that you'd let us know. So, oh, my slides are up. Well, let me just walk through this for just a quick moment on the history of it here. If we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So what this project focused on is an alley project for downtown Tucker. So this is a map of Tucker from 1908, and Tucker was created by the railroad in the 1890s. So when the line was completed between Elberton and Atlanta, the railroad created about a dozen towns, and some of those are still there, some are not. But they purchased land and laid out a city grid for Tucker, like they did for most of the other towns. And so Tucker originally had 8 blocks that were subdivided by 20-foot wide alleys, and most were divided into 4 quarters. And originally these were used for coal delivery. So when we saw these alleys, we really knew this was a golden opportunity for our town to reclaim this right of way and create a pedestrian network away from the street that would benefit the entire community. So we had to find out what if this right of way over a 125-year period was still actually right of way, what had been acquired by private property owners legally and through abandonment, and what may have been misappropriated. So it took us about a day in the records rooms of the DeKalb County Courthouse to realize this was more than our team at the CID could handle. And so that's when the LCI program stepped in. And so we hired through that Lordak Sargent and Alta Planning and Design, and went to work with them on just a really thrilling journey. So if you go to the next slide, we had a pretty good understanding of our vehicular grid, right? So this is the downtown core, and you can see La Vista Road, Lawrenceville Highway, and down the middle is our main street. And if you've been to Tucker, we love our main street. But what we really focused on was the next level. And so if you go to the next slide, this is the pedestrian grid. So this is, in addition to the sidewalks along the road, this is the alley network that divides those 8 blocks. And so as we found out who owned the land, and most of it truly was still right of way, including some of it that was being used by businesses, and those businesses knew it was right of way. So we haven't had any conflict with them yet, which has been great. We were able to prioritize and look and see how the city's master trail plan would connect into this grid. So it's been really, it's been thrilling, really, to be involved in this and to recognize the opportunities to move forward and really create something unique based on what's already really here in the town. And so on the next slide, Lordak Sargent helped us with a rendering to show the public and city staff and elected officials what that network could look like within a familiar space. So this is a rendering of 2 alleys flowing into Main Street. And those alleys are currently there and they're currently available, but people are not using them. And so this was a great thing. And then on the last slide, we brought it down to the street level, so folks could envision what that would look like in space that they're familiar with, in a way that made sense. And we also took an opportunity to put some art there on one of the building walls. We wouldn't do that on the historic brick, but it worked out good for this location, to just show what art could look like within these alleys, because currently Tucker doesn't have any public art. So it's been thrilling. And I could talk about it for hours. Of course I won't. But if any of you'd like to come to Tucker, I'd be happy to walk around and show you the alleys, or we can just talk on the phone. So it's been a really exciting thing for us. And the application process was good. Everything from the one-on-ones to not the pre-application, we'd applied, but before we sent out the RFP, the meeting with Jared and Sam was very helpful.
Yeah, and thanks, Matt. You know, I would say getting that application, it was a little unique for us, especially with like the historical, because part of the application, they actually did a lot of they did a lot of property records searching in the courthouse, which is kind of unique for a traditional LCI study. April, I know your project is currently underway. Can you kind of maybe just talk about, you know, how the housing study, you know, concept came about in Douglasville, and then, you know, what made you kind of apply to ARC and, you know, that application process?
Yeah, absolutely, Jared. So the city, and if you haven't already heard, the city of Douglasville is a planning community. We have adopted over 24 different plans over the past 5 years. So we're busy, very busy. And I had big shoes to fill. Michelle Wright, who recently retired, actually put in for this CDAP grant or this application, and really did a great job in positioning the city to answer the question of housing and what we were experiencing on the local level. So unfortunately, we were bombarded, and I shouldn't, I guess, say unfortunately, but we were surprised and very bombarded by a lot of applications to our planning commission as it relates to apartments. We had never received that many applications in about 6-month period. It was probably almost 12 different applications for potential apartment units. Some were market rate, some were affordable, some wanted a state tax credit, some did not. It just depended on the project. So we wanted to understand why this was happening, what we were doing in order to attract this type of development, what our needs were in the community, if there were some certain gaps in housing that we just were not fulfilling. And we were trying to understand from a planning perspective what we could do to provide quantitative data for planning commissioners and mayor and council to understand which of these projects should move forward that build best for our community, but also how we can support a growing economy and a growing housing market in general. So the city understood this as a need and wanted to evaluate how we could take the project forward and how we could also do our best to answer the question of, are we providing a certain level of housing for our community?
All right, thank you, April. And you kind of touched on this, and both for you and April, how is, your experience working with like the elected officials on your project idea, but also other members of the community to kind of get their support and buy-in, either through like a letter of support or agreeing to participate? And I'll let April go first, I guess.
Okay, thank you. So we did not have any issues with getting support as far as our community is concerned. We all knew this to be an issue that we wanted to provide data for. So elected officials, our partners at the Georgia Chamber or at the Douglas County Chamber of Commerce, at the Development Authority as well within our community. And then we have a very unique community within our community labeled Northside or New Horizons community, which is predominantly African American and actually within the area is considered a food desert. So for them, housing and providing additional housing in their specific area meant additional economic development, grocery stores, et cetera. So we had not only community support, but we really had no issue with our elected officials signing on for this study.
Yeah, and I will also say, we recently launched a, online survey or public feedback forum for the city of Douglasville, and we've gotten some really good responses with that. So you can go hopefully and go see that and kind of just see some of that housing conversation. So Matt, I guess.
Yeah, it was the same for us. I think we've done a fairly good job of keeping everybody who needs to know in the loop long before we ever get to an application process. So they've had time to think about these opportunities. So then when we say, hey, we've got an opportunity to apply to potentially bring in some outside investment, they're all on board. We're also in Tucker very clear to, as you mentioned, the community, not just the elected officials, but really make sure that the commercial property owners, the businesses and others are behind what we're doing so that we have a good cohesive community presence in this whole process. So it worked out pretty well.
Okay. Through the study process, or for both of yours, how was your experience in coordinating with ARC? I know, Matt, you worked with Sam, and Sam's a very busy man. But he was, you're actually your main ARC project manager. So, and then April, I know for CDAP, it's more some of that direct technical assistance. So, I guess, what's been your experience like with that, working with ARC?
Do you want to go first, Matt, or do you want me?
And you can be honest too. Because
Sure. Yeah, I can go first. So we started off with John Tooley, and then he ended up leaving the ARC, and that made us a little bit nervous of what's going to happen here, because we do know that Sam is busy, but we had monthly meetings and he was responsive every step of the way. So we never felt like we were disconnected or free floating on our own, or what can we do? So I think it was a good thing all the way around.
If I can just add to that, and thanks for that, Matt. But one of the things that is that the success of a LCI study comes down to is like coordination, right? So I think as much as Matt's being generous and sort of saying that I was responsive, it was also because of the fact that both with the consulting team and with the project sponsor, they were ensuring that we were kept in the loop, we were included in the conversations, in the steering committee meetings, and we were having regular progress reports and check-ins. And so they really ensured throughout the process that everyone was on the same page. We were all sort of making progress towards the ultimate deliverable, and that we were all happy with it. So I felt like that was a very critical part of the success of the project. And that, again, a lot of it goes down to the project sponsors. So Matt, Beth, I think she's on the call here too.
Yes.
And obviously the consultant. So thanks to you all as well.
I would tend to agree. Just to piggyback off what Matt, of course, and Sam have both said, it's all about the project sponsor's ability to put in the time as well. We had a great experience, and we've, thus far had a great experience with Marissa and her team at the ARC, the Georgia Conservancy as well. They have done a great job with facilitating meetings and providing data, being able to discuss that data through Zoom. Honestly, the word of the year is pivot. Not only did the ARC have to pivot for a brand new project manager from transitioning to Michelle to myself, but also just from these virtual platforms as well. So y'all have done an outstanding job. There's, really not a better team than the ARC in our opinion. Y'all really do a great job with coordination and ensuring all of our partners are on board.
All right, well, thank you very much. I guess, you talked about pivoting, and I know for both Matt and April, the projects, 2020 was a year of pivoting, and that's where a lot of engagement. So has this project turned out how you initially thought it would go? I know April, you kind of joined a little bit later, or how did it change since, that initial concept and thought? And I'll let Matt go first.
Yeah, so we certainly didn't predict a pandemic, but we were grateful to have key parts of the project done before that hit. I mean, this would have been really tough to get into the records room at the courthouse during this phase, so we're grateful that all that work was done. We had a public engagement piece scheduled for an event on Main Street right in the beginning of March, and we kept waiting. Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? And then the event organizers said, yeah, we're not going to do it. Okay, so then we had to back out of that. And there's an event on Main Street about once every 2 months in Tucker. And so as everybody did, we're waiting to see, okay, how long is this going to take? What are the numbers going to show? And throughout the year, it just never, no one was ever comfortable saying, yes, let's have a big event on Main Street. And so that piece of our public engagement, Needy Gajar with Lord Act Sergeant was kind enough to say, here's what we'll do. We'll give you a, I guess it wouldn't be a rain check, it'll be a COVID check. So that when we can come out there, even though the project is done and we paid them and everything's completed, they've agreed to come out and have an event for us when the time is right. So that would be the big piece. But there were some good things that came out of it that we didn't expect. I'll share that as well. We were able to create an appendix of all of the documents that we gathered from the DeKalb County records room, which will be a huge asset going forward. And that ended up being about a 270-page document. So that was not something that we had perceived doing, but that'll be a benefit in the future.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, definitely. Same kind of experience. I would say, we of course didn't understand that the pandemic was going to affect us as much as it has as it relates to community engagement. I wouldn't say we necessarily changed course, but instead developed the process as we continue to move forward. The ARC team created this digital platform that allowed people to interact with a very specific map, so they could pinpoint where they lived, where they worked, if they rented a home, if they owned a home, what their preferences were as far as density, just answering a bunch of questions that we would typically get, to Matt's point, at a community engagement session or during a Main Street event. So for us, we didn't necessarily change course, but we have developed the process as we continue to move forward.
And actually, I just got the link. I'll put the link for the housing website in the chat so people can see that. I guess maybe this question is maybe more for Matt. Have Tucker or the CID has taken steps to implement the project?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned before about sharing all of this before we even got to the point of applying, we had business owners excited. The city adopted the plan in December, which is a great win. So we're really excited about that. We've got a great relationship with the city of Tucker. Courtney Smith's on the call, and she's always helpful to help city council have confidence that what we're recommending is a good thing. But we've got several business owners who, one, bought a building near the alley, and they bought it because it's on the alley. They had thought about, oh, this would be great, we can park cars behind the building. But now they understand that, oh no, we can have outdoor seating behind the building. This is a big deal. Another restaurant just opened up across the street on the alley. And they actually opened up during the pandemic. Surprisingly, they were able to do that. But Ford's Barbecue, and they've got outdoor seating, which is right next door to the alley. We've had conversations with the DDA. They were able to look at the plan and recognize, okay, there's some opportunities for acquisition that they could make that would benefit from the alley. So we were really able to get running with it before the plan was fully completed because we were sharing with the community our progress. So it's been really exciting.
And then April, I know your project's still in the formation phases, and have you I guess doing this project, has housing kind of been discussed more at like your city council or in the community more, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we are actually right in the middle of our pre-planning. Our mayor and council are going to be going to retreat next week. So we'll be providing some preliminary recommendations and findings from the process thus far. So we'll hopefully get some deliverables and potentially some direction from mayor and council at that point. We've also been very active in engaging our public or our planning commission with what we've found thus far. We haven't, put any type of moratorium on any type of development, but nonetheless, they are aware that it's occurring. They're aware of what we're figuring out and finding out as we move forward in the process. But as far as implementation, I know mayor and council, as well as the planning commission, are very eager to kind of have a blueprint for success.
All right, and then this is probably my last question, and it's probably more for April. But Douglasville's done a lot of LCI studies. You mentioned that you're a planning community. You're one of the very first communities that did an LCI study and an LCI transportation project. And I guess, in kind of like, how does LCI and CDAP kind of differ for how it's provided assistance to Douglasville?
It allowed us, specifically for the CDAP program, allowed us to pinpoint an issue that we were recognizing, not only through planning studies that we were already beginning an implementation from, but also just from what the constituents were saying to mayor and council and what we were experiencing on the planning commission side as far as development. So it allowed us to take that specific issue that we identified and develop a strategy for not only quality of life for our citizens, but also ensuring that our community had a sense of resiliency to this future growth. And so that we weren't just growing, but we were growing smart and growing in a way that allowed for lifelong living within our community. I know much of, probably many of the communities that are on the call today have those specific corridors that kind of grew without a fence, if you kind of catch my drift. So we wanted to ensure that we provided a certain level of fencing or parameters so that our communities were growing in a way that made the most sense.
All right. And Matt, I know this I think was your first or second LCI study. Are you interested in applying for a future with ARC?
Yeah, we definitely are. Absolutely. One of the things I mentioned was art, and we're looking into that for the alleys. Yeah, there will definitely be opportunities where we will come back and see if we can work on a project together.
All right. Well, thank you both. I know April will probably have you back to talk about the housing study with Marissa at a future LUCC. And Matt will probably talk more about some of the details to add a feature like LCI sponsors meeting or ideas exchange with your recently completed studies. But thank you very much. We're gonna kind of just do a quick transition to kind of hear from you about some of your project ideas or specific questions for the LCI and CDAP call. That's and I see a giant wall of white names on my screen right now, and I know I've talked to a few of you, so hopefully you guys can share some of your project ideas to the group as well. So I guess, Molly, are you going to turn on the whiteboard? Maybe.
It now should be popping up any moment.
All right.
Jared,
Yes.
I had a question for a panelist.
Okay.
If that's okay. Before, and it should be a quick one. Now, there was something unique to both these studies, I know, with LCI and the CDAP project. April, in the case of the Douglasville housing study, we had the ability, or we were fortunate to be able to partner with Georgia Conservancy to be able to bring both our organizations to be able to help deliver on that. Just wanted to maybe ask you a little bit about what that experience has been like, and what has Georgia Conservancy also brought to the table with this project, because they've been an amazing partner for us for this work. And Matt, I know when you put the application in, you may recall these came in as two separate applications. There were two. One got submitted, I believe, to CDAP, and one got submitted to LCI. One was a master plan study, and one was looking at the alleyways. And then we went through a process to sort of combine these into one larger LCI study. So maybe wanted to hear a little bit, if you recall, about what that process looked like. So, because again, that's at the gist of this. The CDAP program is as much about ARC staff, but also our partners, bringing their resources. And LCI, again, it's us working with the project sponsors to ultimately ensure you're getting the best bang for your buck. And I feel like these projects sort of displayed that. So do you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. So you're talking about where we had applied for both the LCI 5-year update as well. So yeah, I've got a copy of that here. And yeah, we weren't exactly sure how that was going to work out. And we're grateful that the funding was able to take care of both of those. So yeah, I think that gets back to just being clear about what we're looking for, and you guys being both clear with us to say, yes, we can do that. No, we can't do that. So I think that worked out very well. And we're pleased to have both taken care of.
Right.
Okay, I'll go. Sam, yeah, absolutely. We were really excited to work with Georgia Conservancy. They provided a certain level of the what if question. I really enjoyed working with both Catherine and her team, and just understanding how we can reach other populations. And they brought a lot of data. We definitely did not expect all the data. And really, it was a good tie-in for what we were trying to do with sustainable growth, and understanding where our key players are. So yeah, they brought a certain conversation that we didn't expect, but certainly appreciated.
All right. Thanks, April. Thanks, Matt. All right, Jared, back to you.
Thank you, Sam. I just added some text on the whiteboard. So, if you can also add some questions in the chat if you have for us about either specific questions in the applications. I know a few people emailed me already this morning about specific questions. Yeah, any comments or thoughts?
And again, if you'd like to speak, go ahead and raise your hand, and I will send you a request to unmute if you'd rather do that.
And if no one speaks, I may call on people that have talked to me this week. So,
Jared, I'd love to just throw it out there. I know I'll be emailing you shortly, but the city is very interested in an LCI update, which I know we've previously spoken about. We've had, like I said, a ton of work that's been done in their downtown area, as well as within the Fairburn Road corridor as far as planning efforts. So the goal would be then to be able to incorporate those different projects into our overall LCI plan, as it has not been updated in a little while. So we want to make sure that we're incorporating those new ideas.
Yeah, and hopefully some of the housing information can be incorporated in that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, vacant retail space as temporary window galleries. Okay, yeah, I would say that would be an interesting one. You know, we are trying to, you know, provide a lot of, I would say this year, and Anna can probably talk more about this with the CDAP, is some of that economic resiliency and recovery. So it may not be, we may not be out there, you know, developing as the window galleries, but we can probably help you do some of that, that planning issues. Facilitation of the various stakeholders to understand housing issues, elected, chamber, and schools. That's a big one. Sam, did you put that up there?
I did.
Okay.
Conversation. I won't give up who it was, but we've had a very good conversation with a couple of communities that want to get together and bring together elected officials from their respective jurisdictions, the business owners, business community, and also to a certain degree schools, because again, the conversation has been around how we grow and bring in more housing, but at the same time, what's the impact on the schools? And so how do we build in a conversation that also brings in the school officials and some of those folks into the conversation at the front end? Not any way for us to sort of find a solution. That would be the goal, but we are merely, our work in this is going to be bringing them to the table, trying to understand where they are, and essentially just act as the facilitator.
Yeah. And Anna, do you want to maybe talk about that community garden plan? Yeah, because you are our local food expert.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, one of our CDAP priority areas is access to food, and that also includes locally grown food. And part of CDAP, we are also partnering with Foodwell Alliance on city agriculture plans. So we're definitely doing that work already with the city of East Point. And we'd be happy to continue that work with other community garden plans, maybe on a smaller scale. But yeah, we're really interested in that type of work. We think it's really important, particularly now with the renewed interest in growing your own food, and how the city can both support and facilitate that, or whichever jurisdiction you're working in.
All right.
Hey, Jared, we've got a raised hand. Margaret is
okay
and ready to speak.
Well, I was just gonna piggyback on what Sam was saying about the stakeholders for housing issues. School systems are actually they represent two issues. There's the children that are generated from new housing, but they also, many of their employees are in desperate need of housing. And we ran into this in our process early on. We engaged them. They're in the same group as your community's major employers. So that's something to think about.
All right, thank you, Margaret. And yeah, that's really piggyback on what Sam. It's one thing we're hearing more and more from communities. All right, I may call on people, so don't be surprised, especially for former ARC coworkers on the call. All right. Does anyone have any specific questions about the application? There's one thing I didn't put it in the my presentation about the application is that, if you are using a consulting firm to help you with the application process, write the scope of work or anything like that, especially for the LCI projects, those, because of the federal procurement rules, those community or consulting firms would not be eligible to bid on any future work if you are selected. So that's just something to keep in mind as you go through the process. Anyone else?
Looks like Allison wants to
Yeah.
a little bit. So let's see.
Yeah, Allison, maybe talk about the golf course project we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I really couldn't figure out how to raise my hand, so sorry. I picked up on your not so subtle hint, Jared, so thanks, but I was already working on it. But y'all, we have 2 projects in Douglas that we're super excited about. And I think if Katie Quattlebaum is still on the line, Molly, if you want to unmute her, because I'd like her to maybe talk about the golf course project. Well, we're maybe seeing if we can get Katie. The first project I'll chat a little bit about is in the historic Lithia Springs area. We have been working with a stakeholder group there about ways that we can kind of, do small area plan to kind of help align kind of the vision, of that area that had been a city and then not a city with some of our updated zoning and planning policies. And so that being said, I made a note when Anna had spoken about already having a strong community engagement process so that we can kind of have champions from the outset, because we have some amazing folks working in that community who have been working with us, as a steering committee, all virtual during this time of COVID right now, but they've really been champions for me, to kind of like take this process and move it forward. So I think we would be really excited to have some kind of follow-up community facilitation with that group to kind of give them some good ideas and best practices and case studies on how they can become the champions for the projects that we're putting in the implementation plan. So something I think along the line of the Georgia Conservancy Good Urbanism program is something that I kind of have in my mind as sort of a model or a template, for what we could work with going forward, and then just seeing how that evolved as we move through kind of our seeing where COVID is going to take us next. So really excited about that idea. We have a blog that we've been working on to kind of help document the process that we've been going through and the history of Lithia Springs. And if y'all aren't familiar with that, it's a really cool area. And the other project that we're excited about is possibly supporting our partners at the Southern Conservation Trust as they've been working to bring a nature preserve online for Douglas County. And is Katie available yet, or was she still on the call?
Yeah. So
Katie, take it away.
Hi, yes, thank you, Allison. So we're really excited about this. We took ownership of a 380 some acre failed golf course in Douglas County 3 years ago. The golf course has 15 years plus of regeneration on it. Totally overgrown, needs quite a bit of work. All these residents bought nice homes on what they thought was going to be a thriving golf course, and it just didn't work out that way. So we're lucky enough that we now own this golf course. All the golf cart trails are still there. Some of them need a little bit of upkeep, but they're still there. We do need some bridges that need to be replaced, but our long-term goal is to open it up as a public nature preserve that's a free benefit to the community. We currently operate 8 public nature preserves in Fayette County, as well as one in the city of Atlanta and multiple in Henry County as well. And this is a long time coming, and we're excited to work with Douglas County on this, and we think it's going to be a huge benefit to the community that lives there, as well as all the neighbors.
Well, thank you, Katie. I guess, anyone else? If not, I'm going to turn it over to Sam to kind of help us close out.
All right. So again, thanks, Jared. Thanks to our panelists again, Matt, April, just for taking time and sharing your thoughts and your experience with us. Hopefully that was beneficial to the folks on the call. Thanks to the folks who had questions as well. I'm sure that helped clarify some things or pique some interest in some ideas. again, I want to stress that between all the folks that are on this call that you see on video right now, but also the folks, ARC staff in community development, are available to you as a resource between now and the time the applications are due. Please do reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. We're always available. Ultimately, what we want is, I think Matt referred to this, is that you work with us. We'll sort of be very, very upfront and clear with you in terms of what it's going to take for this to be a good fit for our application, whether it's a good fit or not. And in some cases, we can also sort of help you craft it in a way that it could be a good fit. So please do reach out to us with questions. We're very much looking forward to the applications. And also, last thing, if you go to the website, first thing, download those guidebooks because they have a lot of good information in them. And before you start writing an application, please do take a look at both the LCI and CDAP guidebooks. So with that, if there's no other questions, again, thanks for joining us this morning, and we look forward to seeing you virtually and seeing your applications in the near future. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.